Hello and welcome to Feedback for the week of May 12th. I'm Adam Sessler. Joining us today, Sterling McGarvey.
Howdy.
Abby Heppy. And Patrick Klepek.
Yeah.
So, it's good to know you're excited to be here. Apparently,
I just wasn't sure if I was here.
maybe we can get early to walk past the window one more time. Who's
Hurley.
that guy?
Yeah, it was Hurley.
I thought he said early.
I
Yeah,
heard
I thought it was
too.
early too. Oh, apparently it's Hurley. I didn't realize Lost was hooked on phonics, but it's good to know that they are. Obviously, we had our cameo last week. You had no idea about it.
It's very depressing.
Yeah, it was the one that got away.
Yeah.
It was your great
Screw you,
big
Joe
ship,
Lynch.
passing in the night. Actually, it was the afternoon. Okay, so news. We don't really have Activision doing something massive this week, but we
they're
did have
there,
something
don't worry.
happen.
But if we didn't mention it, then it would
Yeah,
just be out of
exactly.
step with everything
It's
we've done
not
the past few
feedback
weeks.
without Activision having done something.
I don't get journalism royalty checks unless I mention Activision once per show.
Don't even joke. People will think that's real.
But yeah, the first big news is one that we kind of knew was all coming eventually, but Little Big Planet 2 is announced, which I think we're all excited about.
Yay!
I think the first what's interesting is that for a long time after they announced or after they released Little Big Planet, they were very adamant we are never releasing a sequel. We are never doing a sequel.
Really?
It makes no sense. They always said they would always do it through
Just
DLC.
add new things.
Even as of last fall, they were like, we just don't see a whole lot of. And really, it sounds like it came down to the backwards compatibility, which is going to be in Little Big Planet 2. All your levels from Little Big Planet 1 will be there. The moment you put in the disc, you already have 2 million stages you can access, and they'll look better because of the new engine. And I was reading in even our interview on G4TV.com that they had to sacrifice certain things they wanted to do with the sequel because they wanted to ensure that, because it was so important to them that came over. And so I think that maybe was the sticking point with them with doing the sequel, was that everything has to work with the first one. You can't break that continuity.
Yeah, and then it's tough. I mean, I can see how this is not an expansion, but to most people's minds, if the two things work together in such harmony,
right?
But what about this? Really merits it as a true sequel with a number.
Well, I mean, it's before it was platformers, and then what can you do within sort of a platformer? And what you saw pretty quickly with Little Big Planet's editor was that people trying to make games that
The feedback
always
side
happens.
Has come.
It's shocked. It's like,
Yeah,
no, I never wanted a sequel to Little Big Planet.
the best part I was about to say that broke the engine, and then our sign fell.
Yes, the feedback engine is made of.
Should we pause and
Cardboard.
put our sign up?
I say we just keep rolling.
Yeah,
I think it'd be
you-
funnier.
Frank, you got a good
Come
shot
on.
right there.
Anyone who was ever curious about Klepek's posterior, well, the mystery is over.
Unless an editor's cutting
It's available
the
for
Lynch's shot.
birthdays and bar mitzvahs.
It's gonna fall again.
Totally.
I guess not speaking of my ass or lack thereof. Yeah. So the first thing you saw in Little Big Planet was people.
Why?
Don't laugh so hard on that, Eddie. The first thing that people started doing in Little Big Planet Editor was breaking it. Was trying to make Space Invaders or R-Type or all these weird sort of games. And so it seems like the big thing with Little Big Planet 2 is that they're embracing that. Rather than you have it to sort of bend the engine to your will, the first thing they showed in the trailer was like a Space Invaders game, an RPG, a racing game. Like the game, it's not about a platformer anymore. That may be sort of where it starts, but where it goes from there is to other genres, essentially.
I mean, I think originally why platformer was so obvious for the guys at Media Molecule is that physics engine. That's kind of what you expect to have in a platformer. Though I think that physics engine started to work towards the platforming's detriment. That perfect physics and platformers don't always make for the most fun time. That sometimes I just want to jump on that ledge.
Yeah, and
give me the mulligan inside of the game.
I don't know if it's been said yet whether you can alter the physics of the game yet. I know you can alter the buttons. So not one of the things you can do is that you can actually change the control scheme of the game to better fit the kind of game you're
What
making.
you are designing. But I'm just saying that I love the physics engine. I don't think that they should get rid of it. But with that physics engine, maybe a platformer shouldn't be the only thing that you can manipulate. You have to be of a very, very high skill level to really get something awesome. Whereas, if you make it more broad based, there's more creativity that more people can get a part of.
Oh, and I've solved your Mass Effect problem because we're just going to make Mass Effect with Sackboy for you.
There we go.
And then you can do everything.
Yes, I have a Mass Effect problem. We will not discuss it here. It involves something completely selfish.
It's actually very disgusting.
Yes, I'll just go. So Also, it seems that you can now you have a Sackbot and you can actually program the AI in the game.
Yeah, you can do some rudimentary AI control over kind of creating, and again, like people did this anyway in Little Big Planet, but you were sort of manipulating physics to try and create a semblance of AI. Now you can actually do that. And actually, the thing that it psychs me the most, and the thing that they said they were going to do with 1, and then I think this is when they sort of realized if we're going to do this, we need to do it in a sequel, was that a web hub. And so the problem is that, how many times did you watch like a cool Little Big Planet level on YouTube or something and be like, well, yeah, I should go check that out, and just never got around to it? Because
that's true.
Now what they're doing is that there's a hub that you can go to. You can't embed levels, but you can link someone to it. And just like when you go to Xbox.com, it'll queue up. And so when you go home, boot up Little Big Planet 2, your level will already be there. You don't have to search it out. It's not a big. I think that will go a long way to like allowing us to link you to the readers to like cooler levels. But then just as a user, because I'm not going to make anything. Nothing in Little Big Planet 2 that I've seen so far I think is going to change my desire to create.
Really?
But it was just,
not like a level with a hatch or a smoke monster?
Really? Come on.
Yeah.
That'd be
Am I going to take the
something.
bait? Am I going to take the
Are you
bait?
gonna take it?
You
Are gonna
should.
take it?
I'm probably.
Do
I
it.
might. I
Yeah,
might.
she-
I
Take
might.
the LB2 challenge.
I might. That'll be
LB2
my first
challenge.
question.
That's it.
Molecular D3 is like, can I create a lost level? But yeah, I mean, it's just that it makes it as a user, you can find things easier, and I think that's going to go a long way for this game, and that's one of the biggest things the first game was missing.
And there's a lot of incentive for a lot of creators out there. It's like, come on, if you're going to make something, you want some attention for it, and this will help facilitate that.
What I think is interesting is the way that they're integrating a lot of the stuff that the community did around the game when it came out. So they created Sackbook, like as soon as Little Big Planet came out, and then Sony kind of put the kibosh on that. And now they've got something that's really official. And I love what I was reading was something about there's like a barcode you can print out.
Yeah, they have.
That was really
You've
cool.
seen some of this stuff, like when you flip through advertisements, there'll be a little barcode that you can. I think it's mostly with like Android phones, but if you scan it in, it can like download an app or a wallpaper or an image. And yeah, now they're
You
doing
use
that
the
with
PlayStation Eye.
Yeah, with Little Big Planet levels, like there could be something that we say, hey, print this out, or it's in an advertisement. Hold it up to the PlayStation Eye, and it just scans it in and downloads the level. Or that you can use that for DLC, and like there's
sure.
a lot of really cool things they can do with that.
I mean, the first game was a wonderful, wonderful experiment, and I think it's cool to think that they've learned a lot from that.
Yes.
And that what we're really seeing is maybe this is that true base that doesn't need a sequel, and we'll just have things added onto it in the future. I remember when the game first came out, I was doing an interview with, and I'm blanking on his name. Who is that stern British man with no hair on his head from
Alex
Sony?
Evans?
No.
He's,
From
Phil
Sony.
Harrison?
he's the
Phil
happy
Harrison,
one.
thank you. Just completely blanked on that right there. He had said that some of the original ideas surrounding the game was not based on it being a platformer, but kind of being able to do sort of small sketches, small plays. He was like, design the background and you can then control the character, which I thought was a great idea that was very, very hard to really make happen in Little Big Planet 1. And hopefully, I suppose see some people do some pantomimes with Sackboy. I find the character so endearing.
Well, I mean, that's what some of the
this really
AI
makes it
stuff
work.
is done is with essentially puppeteering, like different parts of
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this. So like that, there's no reason like stuff like that can't happen. And the problem is like finding it was so difficult. But now if you can just say, hey, look, someone recreated this scene from Lost in Little Big Planet.
Yes.
Like you can just link to
Patrick
it.
Clement.
I was
Created this
thinking-
scene from Lost.
I was thinking of doing Samuel Beckett's Endgame, but yes,
Hey,
we
we can
can
link
also
to
do it
each
that
other.
way. Yes, we'll learn about one another through Little Big Planet.
I'll work on waiting for Godot on the side.
Yes, exactly.
All I do in that game is smack people. So
All right, so Nintendo haven't said much about the 3DS, but now they said a little.
Yeah, they recently had, part of like a regular investor discussion in Japan, and that's we tend to get a little more out of Nintendo when they hold their sort of financial results in Japan because Nintendo of America doesn't necessarily know what's going on. So.
No, sometimes we're calling them, and they're like, "No, we were looking to you to explain it to us."
Yeah, and so so we got a couple of more tidbits about the 3DS. Nintendo publicly acknowledged that the reason they disclosed it early was we kind of thought maybe it was because they were just screwing with people. As it turned out, it was more we need software ready for E3. We had to tell different developers. We knew it was going to leak, so
Got it.
we decided to get out in front of it. But the first thing is that the 3DS isn't the final name. So it's
that's good.
possible that it might not even include the title DS.
that's not
Like,
surprising. Remember when
could
the
it
Wii
be
was the
that-
revolution?
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
it be the Nintendo Deep?
No.
No, it couldn't.
No,
The
it couldn't.
deafening silence, Meg. But I think that's because they've said that the 3DS is their next generation system. You know, this is not just an evolution.
So,
It
so
is-
this could be the DS2 that we all thought was supposed to be coming. We were scratching our heads if this was it or not.
Right, and I think sort of the idea that it's not going to necessarily carry the DS name might signify that, because, you know, you've got the DS, DSi, DS Lite, DSi XL. Like, if you add another DS, like, maybe you just think that's another
Now you
thing.
confused me. And we
Drop
work
this in the trash
industry.
can while you're out. I don't even. Why did I?
But that's probably a smart rebranding measure on their part. I mean, think about the way that they totally rebooted handhelds by getting rid of the Game Boy name
Sure.
with
Yeah.
the DS. It's kind of a breaking of association. And even when the DS first came out, I remember they still had to kind of break people of that because people were coming up to me asking me about the Game Boy DS. And
Yeah.
If you go on
Yeah.
airplanes and they do the whole thing about no electronics, they still
Yeah.
say Game Boy generally, not
Yeah.
DS. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's because everybody still has them.
Well, that's because the airlines
be.
are idiots.
yes.
Okay, I was
'cause-
just saying.
I'm just
it's an anecdote.
I know.
Although I will say, kind of non sequitur, fun fact. Did you ever notice when you go through airport security, when they have the little diagrams of stuff you put in the security box for game consoles, it's a 360?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I remember.
I've
years
tried
and
to bring a
years
game
and
of the
years ago,
360 through those.
when Matt Kyle was trying to take an old Xbox through, and WoW was security perplexed. They're like,
does look like
you
a
don't
bomb."
do that. You
Yeah.
don't. They knew it was an Xbox. They're like, who moves an Xbox?
I've run into
Matt Kyle
several
does.
problems with that.
Okay, but the big thing from this Nintendo announcement is that the 3D is optional.
Yeah, it can be turned off. It sounds as simple as just turning off a switch. But the thing from that is, and I know this, if you want to read the user comment, that'll actually read into.
Yes.
It's from Incantor.
Incantator.
Incantator.
Yeah, he said, this is a little disappointing news to me. If the 3D is just an optional feature of the game and not something that is vital for gameplay, then it's just a publicity gimmick. It's like the difference in quality between the movies that were developed from the ground up to be 3D and the ones where 3D is just tacked on after the movie has been filmed.
Well, I don't know if that is necessarily addressing the core of it. I actually really like the idea that it'll still. I
Well,
mean, 'cause-
and Iwata said like, this is really actually for health reasons and vision reasons. We don't want to force people to have to, because essentially in 3D, even the 3D they will use, the only tech that exists is still tricking your eye. Like
Yes.
it's
Right.
making your eye do something it's not supposed to do. So if they don't want people to throw up all over their DS, so
Or,
Well,
just
and
go,
plus-
or just go cross-eyed.
they might have to buy another one. Though,
and I'm sure there
so-
will be games that are built. Of course, there'll be games that are built from the ground up for 3D and not necessarily. And probably games where maybe it's not optional. This sounds it's just
Sure.
optional through the equipment because I still want to be able to play all of my 2D games that I
Well,
have.
is this? I mean, is the sense from this that okay, the game has 3D, but you don't always have to play it in 3D, or does this mean that not all games have to be 3D on the system?
Because that's the way that I was thinking about it.
Yeah, it's hard to say because
It's
they don't.
just Japanese.
Yeah,
Right.
they don't want to quite go into it yet. But the essentially our only takeaway so far is that you can turn it off. It's possible it might be required by games, but my guess is it won't. My guess is you'll
Yeah.
have to have it might not look as good, or you might not be able to play it as well. But my guess is there will be a fail safe for every game that.
Well, the upside to that, if like the 3D can be turned off on all the games, is that they would obviously now need some other hook to what this system is outside of just the 3D. Probably not a third screen, but some other device, something. Because obviously I'm not excited about this 3D thing.
Right.
But I would love to have something to get me excited about, a new handheld, even though no handheld has ever excited me.
I love my DS. You should be.
I know. I just know. I'm. I'm saying it's just me. Is that I tend to like portability when I'm like en route somewhere.
Adam reads
Yeah.
books on airplanes.
Yeah, and
I've got my copy of the New Yorker.
yeah. Oh, look, talk of the town. Oh, that's a funny one about
Wait, it
middle
doesn't help
class
if you're
life in the city.
imitating us
imitate
imitating you.
yourself.
Yeah, but I do like reading the New York on the plane, as for kids. But I think the challenge, especially as for kids, you can play DS anywhere.
Right.
I only tend to play it when I'm on a plane, and I found as life has gone on, because I hate flying so much that I don't want a challenge from my game. I want like something I just want a hack and slash where I always
Now
win.
he just gets a dose of horse tranquilizer and wakes up wherever he's going.
Yeah. And it's usually with a horse.
Well,
That's what's so awkward.
I think one thing that 3DS could do that you've seen them try to do with the XLs, that they said one of the reasons they liked the XL, other than the big screens, is that the big screens allow people to look at the screen. It's kind of an attention getter. And one of the things that I can't remember who published it, but now we kind of have confirmation from inside Nintendo that they consider Apple like an actual enemy.
Yes.
Yeah.
They consider that's not something that they publicly said, but Reggie has pushed back on this really hard. But from Iwata's perspective, it might not be right now, but looking 5-10 years down the road, Apple and their products really kind of encroach on what they're trying to do. And something like the 3DS, like that gets people excited. Like one of the reasons the Wii was so cool was like you saw someone doing that, and that was you like wanted to do it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
if you were like on an airport and you saw like someone playing a little 3D machine next to you, like that would get you interested. Like I think that could go towards getting that sort of like buzz that they need, and like
they
that's
have
their
it.
hook.
I was pointing out to Sterling earlier that the only pictures I have on this are pictures other people have taken because they've been messing around with it and checking out all of the features and
I guess the one thing is I see where you're coming from on that, Patrick, but I've been going over in my head that Nintendo with their press conference, how are they going to show this technology? Because since it clearly requires your own set of eyes being fooled.
Yeah.
How are they? It's interesting. It's like they have this like a very interesting piece of tech,
And they can't even put glasses on you.
without getting it into someone's hands. How do you actually let them experience?
How much do you want to
Show
bet they
floor.
have glasses at the press conference so that they can convey everything to you? And then they say, if you want to see more with your own eyes, come to our booth.
yeah.
Yeah,
I-
I'm going to bring someone else's eyes because I'm worried about the trickery.
That's terrifying.
It's a bit like Minority Report.
Yeah, a little bit. Just pop them out. Oh, it's good. Yeah, put 'em back in. Moving on to our third story.
Or maybe it'll be like Oprah and there'll be a new one under all of our seats.
Yeah. Let's try story number 3 before I gross everyone out with my portable eyes. Kotick.
Too late.
This
West.
story brought to you by
Zampella.
Activision.
Yes.
So, I mean, Activision, like a lot of their companies now, is having their fourth quarter results, fiscal calls. And so Activision tends to be the most interesting because Kotick tends to be the most honest of pretty much any CEO around
Which,
other
you
than
know what?
Riccatello.
We give him crap for that, but at the same time, you got to respect it.
I do,
It's
'cause
that he doesn't whitewash it. He doesn't use, corporate speak. He's kind of like a dude who runs a company that is going to shoot straight. And for that, I have to tip my hat to him.
And so
go.
at the beginning of their call, they said, well, it's kind of dissuade people from getting too excited. Like, we can't really comment on the Infinity Ward stuff because of the lawsuit. But then Kotick read this, fairly long statement addressing it. And he essentially, said, yes, there was why they came to the decision of doing it was because they had no other choice. And so, and what's really interesting, and you see the whole statement up on G4TV.com, but he calls the both of them friends. He says, quote, I personally consider the two of them, Jason West and Vince Zampella, friends, and their decision was a compromise of our friendship, which was equally disappointing. Once we began to understand what had occurred, there was no gray area. There was nothing that we could have done that allowed us to retain their services as talented as they might have been.
Now, what you just read sounds like there was an incident or there was some behavior. I mean, is this what we assume to be them talking to EA?
It sounds like it, and he doesn't make any allusions to what they were doing because it's not that's sort of like within the complaint at this point.
Right.
So he's sort of talking abstractly, but. The tone of it does very much sound like he feels like he got burned too. Clearly there's bad blood on both sides, but just based on what we're seeing in both lawsuits, it seems like most likely both parties were at fault in some capacity, and it sounds like Kotick feels like he was legitimately burned. He may have handled the whole situation poorly, but he definitely doesn't sound like he's not taking it lightly, or he had no reason to issue this.
And
This doesn't
he
help
has no
shareholders.
reason to take it lightly. I mean, as we said on this show before, this entire situation would be so different if it wasn't for whoever, and I don't know necessarily if it was Kotick, and I almost think it wouldn't be, who made the decision to send the scary people over to Infinity Ward that day. That's what took this from being a business dealing that both parties had the ability to try to spin it in their favor to something that made Activision look so bad in the process. I mean, this is kind of like a divorce.
Yeah.
And there's
It's
usually a
messy.
pox on both the houses in a situation like that. Everyone's going to claim they were the angel, but that rarely
Exactly.
ever is the case. Is there any sense that we're going to hear any more in the future, or did he kind of read this statement as if this is the last I have to say on this?
It's pretty much this sounds like sort of Activision's declarative statement on it
Yeah.
until whatever we hear out of the lawsuit going forward, which more than likely will end in some sort of settlement between the two parties. But what was interesting that they did commit to saying that Infinity Ward is already working on their next project and did say that it will be Call of Duty, but wouldn't say that it would be the game coming out in 2011.
or if it would have the name Modern Warfare, because that's clearly
Right.
another thing that's at stake in this
Right.
lawsuit.
Because Modern Warfare could theoretically disappear if West and Zampella get their way, but it does sound like Infinity Ward probably would have been on the 2011 game, but now that will more than likely
Now
be
that they have to restaff the entire studio?
Yeah, now they have to
Yeah.
restaff, about half the studio. It sounds like Sledgehammer Games, a third-person action game, will probably take that slot and get moved up.
And new map packs. Ooh, sorry.
Is that sarcasm or actual excitement?
No, I'm actually excited. I feel like that those are probably finished before all of this ever happened.
Right.
Because they just, roll content out over the year. So, yes, I am actually excited to know that I will get new map packs. I would prefer that they're not $15, but yes, I would like new map
nothing in the
packs.
call indicated that will not be the case.
Yeah.
It's sold a lot.
Hey, be glad it doesn't come with a peripheral. All right, let's just
don't
let's
jinx
take
it.
our wins.
Don't
You're right.
jinx it.
You're right. I have no wood to knock. Oh well. Huh. Our fourth story. This is great. I'm glad we have this in here because I received, I think, 4 tweets today about this. EA's Online Pass,
Yeah.
and it's required if you want to play multiplayer with the EA Sports games.
So yeah, I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's boiled down to...
Clearly, if I'm getting these tweets, it has to be more than just that.
It's yeah. So essentially, with Mass Effect 2, they did the
Cerberus Network,
Network, and so the idea was that it was a $10 pass that you got for free, didn't have to pay $10 for the new product, but if it was used, you had to pay $10 to get access to this kind of bonus content. It was free downloadable content in addition to in Mass Effect 2 wasn't services, but in EA Online games it's going to be services. So starting with Tiger Woods Golf, the online pass will essentially, you need that to do online multiplayer, bonus content. And if you buy it used, then it's $10.
Then you can buy in for $10 and get
Right.
access to all the same
You also
content.
And if you buy it used, it's a 7-day pass, so you
Yeah.
can technically experiment with it for free for a little bit. I'm waiting to hear back from EA whether that means you'll be able to do things like, if you were to get the 7-day pass, can you buy the DLC and then still use
then
it after it
retroactively
expires?
use
Yeah,
it
I don't know
after it's
exactly how
already
that works.
expired.
Sterling, I want you to chime in on this because
Okay.
you play sports games
Yes.
more than I think the 3 of us do.
Well, that's what I tweeted today. I said, show of hands, how many people who are so outraged about this EA thing actually play sports games, and how many of you are just bitching to bitch?
Did you get any responses?
Yes.
And?
Quite a few people were like, no, I'm with you. I play sports games. I buy them day one. This doesn't affect me. A lot of people said that.
I mean, also, for whatever reason, sports games seem to have a much better shelf life in one's home. That like,
I think so.
I wouldn't return FIFA because a FIFA game, this month and a FIFA game 4 months from now is going to feel just as fresh. It's not based on narrative or anything like that.
No, not at all. It's
But
something
it
that
is-
you're playing with people online. I mean, it's just like, I think like it's almost as evergreen as a shooter. At this point, a shooter is a great, popular, competitive multiplayer shooter is arguably has as much value as a sports game where people are competitively playing against each other online.
Yeah.
For a year until the roster gets updated, right?
I hate that argument.
It's there.
And I think
Sorry.
with sports games in particular, like the sales of those are so front loaded too, because they're
Yeah.
always timed to be released with an
The
event,
season.
Right.
or a season beginning. So I see the arguments for why people could be upset about this, but like I feel like the people that are going to be playing these games more than likely are going to be buying them day one
one,
anyway.
yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
If you're invested in playing FIFA, you're buying FIFA because you want to be there playing when the soccer season frenzy is going on. So
Sure.
I think this is just to kind of curve out the handful of people that don't do that.
Well, how much of this is also a problem that I think EA has where if another company had tried this, they might have gotten away with like sort of less furor that they seem to sometimes ham-fistedly get into these sort of new ideas, primarily to try to, get used games to not, or to get people to not return the used game. And it always looks like they're somehow trying to control or get more money out of you and just make things challenging. I mean, the Cerberus Network was this extra awkward step. Trying to get DLC for the PC version of Dragon Age isn't, I can't do it. It's just too challenging.
I think what gets people up in arms about Online Pass specifically is the online multiplayer part. I think with Mass Effect 2, I think people... Nothing about their Cerberus Network isn't like really cool because it's like you buy it new, you get free DLC.
Yeah.
It's no big deal.
Well, the DLC
I think-
wasn't great.
Okay, but it was still free.
Get what you pay for.
You didn't have to pay for it.
But I also can't play it at my desk because I don't have an online connection. I'm angry.
Fair enough. That's the DRM issue.
Now, I will, just to pop in, there's a lot of these features that you already had to pay for in other games, which is another thing about the outrage. It's kind of like, well, if you guys have been paying attention 2 years ago when NBA Live, like when NBA Live 09 was coming out, they said, okay, we're going to have like live seasons where you're going to have like, I think it was like Gamer DNA. And the idea was every day based on the stats and the performance
Right.
of basketball games, that was going to affect the stats in your game. And if you bought a used copy of NBA Live, you had to pay like $20 to get that feature. And so
it's
coming in at 10, I understand the concerns about online multiplayer, but I'm
Yeah.
like,
Because I think
it's day one, like you were saying.
But with the online multiplayer, and I think this is where people actually kind of a legitimate point is that they're restricting online multiplayer through a second gateway. So especially we're talking about Xbox 360. So you're paying an annual fee for Xbox Live for access to online multiplayer, and then you're also going through a second gateway to get access to EA's games for online multiplayer. And to have that, just I think it's people like having to jump through two hoops when, like, say I pick it up used. Well, I've already got to pay my $50 to Microsoft, and then I got to pay another $10 for EA. What is EA doing for me? You know, I think it's less about. I think it's just that, like, all these new gateways that people are trying to get you, and so I think it's more on principle. And I do get that point of, like, now you have to pay Microsoft and you have to pay EA if you go the used route. But
I mean,
I don't think it's going to be a concern for
I
most
was having
people.
problems
No.
just getting assistance from EA when I was locked out of Battlefield a few weeks ago because of server errors.
Right.
And I had enough trouble. I couldn't even remember my EA login, off the
God,
top
I-
of my
Yeah.
head
Yeah.
to even get technical support to help me figure out what was wrong or like call in my problem. It was a pain, I guess. I mean, my concern is absolutely having to go through more than one source, especially if something
Because when something
breaks
goes
down
wrong,
and
if something goes wrong,
wrong.
do I go to Microsoft because I'm paying them for my online gold subscription, or do I go to EA because I'm going through their EASports.com gateway?
See, this is where, like, say what people like Dennis Dyack have said, like, let's just have one console. Solves all the problems. Then it's just that one company's fault, whoever it is. We can just call it the game company.
the game company.
All right. So I don't want to go into a discussion because I want to get to our game of the week, but it's also worth noting that Frank Frazetta died. If you aren't familiar with the work of Frank Frazetta, he was an artist. If you play a game like Dragon Age or any game that's a fantasy game where
Any game with
the
big
female
macho
warriors
dudes and
seem to be
chicks.
unduly busty and unduly underdressed for the dangers at hand, well, he was the man behind it because he created that imagery of the fantasy world. He may not be with us anymore, but let's be honest, his legacy's never going to go away. He left his mark.
Respect.
All right, game of the week, Lost Planet 2. Show of hands, who's excited?
Don't put us on the spot like that.
Hands under the table on this one.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Patrick and I have been playing it, and we started off by making like I started playing at my desk where I don't have an internet connection, and it was even confusing to figure out how I was starting it.
Well, so
Because you have to select then offline, and then you start a campaign. It throws in like 3 AI bots with you, and to be fair, they're actually not bad.
I mean, the weird thing is this feels from top to bottom like it was designed to be a 4-player co-op game.
Yes.
Even to the point that like the menu system is confusing because when you start, like you just think I'm gonna go play single player, I'll jump in, but no, you have to create a game and you pick which mission you're going to start on. And
Really?
you
Yeah.
create
Yes.
you create an instance. And so when you go to the chapter, you select it, and it goes, okay, confirm, countdown, and it counts down from 10 before it creates the session that you've created for yourself.
And you're not going out
offline.
on the internet
No.
anywhere.
No.
It also does that whenever you complete a mission. It counts down to the end of the mission.
It says
once you
when
kind of reach
yeah,
the final
when you reach the barrier, it
Yep.
just starts going 10, 9, 8,
Eight.
and then
That
it
was
ends.
that was the deal breaker for me. There was one point when I was playing basically the near final build for preview, and I got up to go to the bathroom because I'd finished playing for an hour and it was counting down. And when I came outside, I had 4 seconds left, got to my controller, and it booted me to the menu and didn't save. And at that point, I just said, I'm done.
Oh, that's odd.
I'm
It is-
through with this game.
Okay, let's just point out the review is up on our website. It was written by Paul Semmel, who is
3 out of
obviously
5.
not here to chat with us, but obviously you guys have played the game. A 3 out of 5. One of the things that I think really has some people scratching their heads is how different this game is from the original Lost Planet. The original Lost Planet
Yeah.
had multiplayer, but it had a very robust single player. They've completely scrapped that to go to a model that's pretty much, I assume, based upon their ridiculous success in Japan with the Monster Hunter series.
Which is
see
odd
that.
to me, given that Lost Planet was a successful North American franchise. Like it was specifically
Yeah.
designed
Yeah.
for what Dead Rising and Lost Planet were designed as like this is Capcom's big Western push
Western
to go
audience,
along
right.
with the launch of the Xbox 360.
Yeah.
And then this new one, I mean, I think Lost Planet feeds into my problems I have with Capcom's takeaway of co-op. Like this happened with Resident Evil 5. It's why I didn't like Resident Evil 5 because you had to play co-op to really
Yes.
get the
Yes.
full enjoyment of
Yep.
that game. It didn't work as a single player game.
I
And
disagree. Go on.
well, you're wrong, but but I get the same. I get the same impression from Lost Planet to like a whole new degree. The whole game feels like a multiplayer game. Like every single mission feels like an instance of an online game. Like it's just generated a level that you have a mission that you have to complete, as opposed to being sort of a cohesive single player adventure that happens to have people that can come play with you.
I mean,
Yeah.
Sterling, I mean, is this a matter that this is where Japanese tastes in games are moving and they were catering towards that?
Very much so, I think. I mean, I looked at, besides this, and it's all hit at the same time. Right when I was playing that Lost Planet 2 preview build, I went to San Francisco to play Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker at another preview event. And Peace Walker is decidedly like Monster Hunter. There seems to be this very strong push towards recreating this 4-player co-op experience, which I think completely shuts out what Western gamers want, what I think people outside of Japan want. I think going back to what you were saying about Capcom's approach to initially with Dead Rising, with the first Lost Planet, I think that since then they've kind of made an about face because the Xbox 360 maybe hasn't done as well in Japan as they had hedged their bets on, and now they're making this Lost Planet for a wider Japanese audience who they think, okay, well, this is what they want to play. They want these co-op based games. Do you like co-op based experiences? If you don't, well, tough luck. You're gonna get it whether you like it or not.
That's the thing, though. Like, I can play Gears of War or something, and I can play it single player, or someone can jump into my co-op game. I've had fun either way. I just feel like Japanese developers, or specifically Capcom, are missing the point of balance. Like, they're not balancing the game for different players. They've just designed it for 4 and just sort of hope it works out and scales down,
the co-op
and it's
that
not.
I've enjoyed
No.
the most in the past couple years is one that has a single player and then has a separate
Yes.
co-op element, so that I can do both, whether it's Splinter Cell or Modern Warfare with the Spec Ops stuff, anything. I like having those two components separate, so I can
Except
kind
for
of
Left
enjoy
4
the
Dead.
experience either way. Well, yeah.
I'm just saying. I know. It's like Valve.
And
All
I
things
still-
Valve existed.
And I still play by myself in that half
Yeah.
the time.
Now,
Because the AI is better than a lot of my friends.
here's the part that leaves me head scratching. And it's been a couple of years since I've been back to Japan, but last I checked, and for so long, that was despite their sort of everyone's perception of Japan as being this technologically just cutting edge place. The internet was never embraced with the same speed and breadth as as the West and as in places like Korea. But right now we're looking at games that kind of require some degree of connectivity. Now, is because of the ridiculous success of mobile gaming, and I mean like with mobile phones.
Well, I think, like to the point of Monster Hunter and what's going on with Peace Walker is that these games end up designed with a 4-player co-op in mind, and the assumption that these people are going to, like with Peace Walker, that's like the Monster Hunter formula of it's going to be local. Like, you're always going to be around people that can play with you locally. Like when they released the Lost Planet, sort of demos to sort of gauge people's reaction, they've released the Lost Planet demos far ahead of the game's release multiple times. The immediate playtesting they're getting from players is of people playing online multiplayer where they're going to play for people. That's the whole point of the demo.
Right.
So I just feel like that their playtesting they're doing it themselves is reinforcing a belief they had, but isn't necessarily.
It's like stovepiping.
You put out a multiplayer demo, so people are going to play it multiplayer. You didn't put out a single player demo because that's just not how it was meant to be played. So I think they just, I don't know. It just feels like a fundamental difference between design and sort of play styles in the two different areas of game development.
Well, cool. Well,
It does move faster than the first one.
It does, and
It
it
does.
yes. And when you fall down, you don't stay on the
When
ground
you
as
fall
long.
down, you're not like.
That was okay. I don't even want to go into that.
Also, grappling hooks. Every game has to play Just Cause 2 because no grappling hook
Well,
works as good as
there's a
that
better
game.
range on the one in Just Cause 2, and it's utilized.
It's like 100 times more. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
all grappling hooks must be cartoonishly
Yes.
long in their reach.
Exactly.
Anyway, as I said, the review, Paul Semple, thank you so much. Who did it? It's up on our website. 3 out of 5. Definitely worth the read. Don't just listen to people discussing it. Reading is good and fundamental.
Very much.
And with that, I want to go to a viewer question. This is from Geistman. Hopefully not based on the GameCube game. How much is too much? The media and politicians continually hit upon the waste that video games bring to the daily life of those who use them, but where do you think the line is between a relaxing hobby or an entertainment piece and a wasteful or addictive problem, if you think it can be wasteful or addictive? I think this is clearly in response to some of the comments Obama made. I actually responded to that on my soapbox. How much is too much?
I have an answer. Long time ago, back before I was doing this professionally, I worked at a game shop, and I overheard a guy saying that, oh, yeah, I got to pay my child support this month. But how's this game? That's when it's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think it's I don't know. I mean, it's like wherever you put your own value on, what is, what is too much.
Most people say that you start to demonstrate a problem in all facets of doing something too much.
Right.
When you start to not take care of yourself, of like those basic duties. You are not showering. You are not showing up to work on time.
I wasn't going to school. I had a Counter-Strike problem.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think they happen. I think that's the other thing, is that we've also come to this sort of, when you have shows like on A&E, like Intervention, like we have this kind of drama that addiction is this kind of hard and fast point that it's like, and people can have a period of time where they've made bad decisions and they can pull themselves back. I mean, it is not so much like a chemical dependency, which is because then your brain or your body is asking for something. I think there is too much, and I worry about the too much because the people who seem to play World of Warcraft to the point of ridiculousness or other games like that, they do start to typify everyone else who really is just playing games as a hobby and hoping to get some time in whenever life affords them those few hours. And then sometimes they plan, okay, I am going to do nothing over this weekend so I can play a game I'm really looking forward to.
Well, I think one of the things that you see between my iPhone, my iPad, my DSiWare, whatever, there are games are now designed through different. The design is meant to fill the kind of time I have. Like there are games for all sorts of time gaps, and I think
games you can play at your desk at work.
That's always
traveling.
the stuff that like when like Obama's talking about it, it's more just like everything is so constructed to fill every moment of your time, and so you end up doing these sort of like he drops things like iPad and Xbox, and it gets people up in a tizzy. But I mean, it's more about like just nowadays you can spend every spare moment doing sort of like brain numbing entertainment. Or it could be reading or something like that.
Or just, as I believe Sterling is more wont to do than the three of us, just being thoughtful and pensive. Just not doing anything.
Just hang out. Soak up your thoughts.
I mean, that's the part that distresses me, is that I think for everyone here, we have slowly grown into this. Whereas it does sometimes give me some pause that there is a generation, this is normal.
Yeah.
And I think without that sense of perspective that we have, we know sometimes, I think I'm going to pull back. I'm going to go take a hike
always
today.
Always immediacy entertainment, at all times.
I guess, and I know I'm going to upset a few people who are watching this. I'm more bothered with not so much people under 18, but people under 13 playing that many video games. I don't think that is the right time of life. I've always found this to be a very, very adult pastime. I like that games cost $60 because that kind of precludes a certain age group from having sort of endless access to this type of content. We would
all rather kids go out and play or read books.
Yeah, well, it was just that. It's
socialize with their friends.
And I'm glad that there's socialization that happens through video games, but
no, you're not. No, you're not. If you've heard that socialization, you are not happy about it.
Oh, that's true.
There's no substitute for just going outside with your friends and having fun.
I know.
Sure.
There is no substitute.
I don't think you'll find any bigger advocates for doing things other than video games than all of us.
People who are around them all the time.
Yeah.
Making a bong out of an apple. I mean, you have to do that with friends.
Yeah. What?
Oh, it wasn't a... No.
Yeah.
Anyway.
College. Making a smoke monster out of an apple.
So it's... Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like what's his face said in the Supreme Court. You know it when you see it. Too much is going to really, really read
if you have
much.
to ask yourself if you're doing it too much,
then
you probably are.
Yeah. But at the same time, there is something just innately compulsive to video games. I think that's some of the genius that's inside of the design of really, really good games. All right. Well, that's it for this week's feedback. Thank you so much, Sterling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Patrick. Once again, to the good folks over at Activision, do something. We can talk about it next week because we always will.
Yay.
Yay.
You're on feedback. See you next week.
Video games.
Claire Schroeder.
Do you play World of Warcraft or one of its 1,000 clones? Do you know what a mob or pug is? Then you'll want to make sure to check out the MMO Report. It gives you all the massively multiplayer online news you could want in a neat little package named Casey Schreiner. Check out all new episodes every Thursday over at g4tv.com/MMO. You're welcome.